I was wearing my graduation gown on a city bus. That is how this story begins. Not in a car with my parents, not getting dropped off at the front entrance with flowers and hugs, and someone taking a photo of me before I walked through the doors. I was sitting on a hard plastic seat between a man with 2 grocery bags balanced on his knees, and a teenager whose headphones were so loud I could hear the tinny percussion from where I sat. And I was in my cap and gown. I was holding my heels in my hand because I had decided to wear sneakers for the commute and change in the bathroom before the ceremony. And the gown was already warm even though it was only 10 in the morning. And the bus smelled like diesel fuel, and somebody's breakfast sandwich, and the particular kind of stale that public transit absorbs over years of use. I had my diploma folder ready in my bag, the one you buy from the campus bookstore to hold the document you receive on stage, and I had my phone in my other hand, and that is when the notification came through. My mom had posted something on Facebook. I opened it. It was a photo. My parents and my sister, standing in front of a car dealership, all 3 of them smiling wide. Behind them, taking up most of the frame, was a brand new silver car. It was a BMW 3 Series. It had a white ribbon on the hood. The caption read, "Investing in Emily's future. So proud of our girl." I read it once. I read it again. I read it a 3rd time while the bus hit a pothole, and the man beside me shifted his grocery bags, and the teenager's music kept going. I did not cry. I did not text anyone. I just sat there on the 47 bus in my graduation gown, reading my mother's caption, and letting it settle into me the way cold water settles into your clothes when you've been caught in rain. Slow and thorough and cold in places you didn't expect. Hi, my name is Megan. I am 24 years old, and on the day I graduated from college, my parents bought my younger sister a car. Not a used car from a family friend. Not a practical sedan they'd been saving toward for years. A BMW 3 Series, silver, brand new from a dealership, $43,000 with a white ribbon on the hood. I know the exact details because my mother documented every part of it on social media and sent photos to the family group thread. While I was riding the 47 bus across Columbus in my cap and gown, because my dad had told me to, just take the bus, my parents were at a dealership signing the final paperwork on a car for my sister Emily, who had just gotten her first real job and needed a vehicle to get to work. My dad had said it so casually. He had said it like it was a logical, obvious, perfectly fine thing to say. He had said, "Megan, you've always figured out transportation on your own. Just take the bus. You're so independent." And I had said, okay. I had said, sure. And I had walked to the bus stop in my cap and gown and waited, and gotten on, and sat down, and read my mother's Facebook caption, and felt something inside me go very, very quiet. I want to back up. My name is Megan, and if you want to understand why that bus ride hit me the way it did, you need to understand something about the family I come from. I grew up in the Midwest, in a mid-sized city, in a house that was comfortable but not wealthy. My parents both worked. We had enough. Not luxury, but enough. I have one sibling, my sister Emily, who is 2 years younger than me. From the outside, we probably looked like a normal family, and in many ways we were. But there was a dynamic that ran underneath everything in our house like a current you couldn't see but could always feel, and that dynamic was this. Emily needed things, and she got them. I needed things, and I was told I was strong enough not to need them. And over the course of 24 years, that dynamic built something inside me that I am still in the process of taking apart. Not with anger, just with honesty. Have you ever been the one in your family who just handles things? The one who doesn't make noise, doesn't cause drama, doesn't ask for help, and so everyone around you quietly concludes that you must be fine? Because that was me. From the time I was about 12, I was the one who figured it out. I applied for my own scholarships when it came time for college. I chose a state school specifically because I knew my parents were unlikely to contribute significantly to tuition, And I had run the numbers on what I could manage with loans and work income, and I had made a plan that worked. I bought my own supplies, paid my own bills, managed my own calendar, and I did it all without being asked twice or making it anyone else's problem. And my parents looked at this and said, "See, we raised her right." They said it with real pride. They genuinely believed they had given me something, and I believed it too, for a long time. I believed I had been given the gift of capability. It took me until I was 24 years old and sitting on a bus in a graduation gown to understand that what I had actually been given was a reason why they didn't have to show up. If this story is already resonating with you, if you recognize something in it from your own life, please consider subscribing to this channel before we go any further. The button is right below this video and it costs you nothing. Subscribing is genuinely the thing that allows me to keep making content like this, and it takes about 3 seconds. If you are someone who has ever been the capable one, the one the family counted on to handle things quietly, I am making this for you. And while you're here, I would love to know, what city are you listening from? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and it always means something to me to know where these stories find people. My sister Emily is 2 years younger than me, and growing up she needed more. More support at school, more patience, more help with social things that felt harder for her than they felt for me. She struggled in ways I didn't. And as a kid, I didn't resent that. When you're 11 or 12 and your sibling is having a harder time, you don't calculate the cost. You just notice that they need more, and if you're a certain kind of kid, the kind who wants things to go smoothly, you find ways to make less noise so that more attention can go where it's needed. I was that kind of kid. I made less noise. I found ways to need less. And my parents, who were not bad people, who loved both of their daughters in whatever way they were capable of, responded to my making less noise by making less noise back. They stopped asking. They stopped checking in. They started assuming I was fine. And because I was good at performing fine, the assumption stuck, and then it calcified. And then it became the story of who I was in my family, the capable one, the independent one, the one who doesn't need anything. And once a story like that gets established in a family, it is almost impossible to undo without someone making a scene. And I was not someone who made scenes. The contrast between what Emily received and what I received was not something I understood fully while it was happening. It built slowly, the way a water line builds on a wall during a flood. You don't notice the individual drops, you just notice one day that the mark is higher than it should be. I noticed it in high school when my parents funded Emily's 3-week summer language program in Florida without hesitation, and I was told to find a summer job if I wanted spending money. I noticed it when Emily needed a laptop for school, and my parents bought her a MacBook, and when I needed one, they said they'd see what they could do, and then forgot. And I eventually bought a refurbished Dell with my own savings. I noticed it at every birthday, where Emily's gifts were thoughtful and substantial, and mine were whatever was easy or on sale that year, and my parents would look at me with such genuine warmth that I'd feel guilty for even registering the difference. I noticed it in the doctor's appointments they drove Emily to, and the ones I navigated alone with a bus pass and a clipboard of paperwork I filled out myself at 17 because I didn't want to bother them. I noticed it in the way they talked about our futures. Emily was finding herself. I was already so together. Emily's struggles were met with resources. My successes were met with pride, but not with help. And somehow, every single time this happened, I found a way to absorb it and keep going. Because the alternative, which was to say something, to name it, to ask for parity, felt impossible. It would have required me to become a different kind of person than I had been allowed to be. By the time I got to college, I had built my entire identity around not needing things from my parents. I was attending a state university in Columbus, Ohio. I was studying business administration, which I had chosen partly because I was genuinely interested in it, and partly because I had run the math on employability and starting salaries, and decided it was the most strategically sound path for someone who needed to be financially independent as soon as possible after graduation. I worked as a paid intern at a marketing and logistics firm for all 3 years of my undergrad. About 20 hours a week during school and full-time in summers. I had a budget. I had a planner. I had a spreadsheet that tracked every expense. I maintained a 3.7 GPA. I did all of this not because I was exceptional, but because I had no other options. The plan had to work because there was no backup plan. There was no, if this falls through, call my parents. There was just the plan, and it had to work, and it did. And every time I talked to my parents and mentioned how much I was juggling, my dad would say, "See? We raised you right. You've always been so self-sufficient." And I would smile and say thank you and get off the phone and sit in my apartment and feel something I didn't have a name for yet. Something lonely, but also familiar. Something like being praised for carrying a weight that no one ever offered to help lift. During my junior year of college, something happened that I want to tell you about, because it is part of the machinery of how things eventually broke open. Emily, who had been attending a community college after high school, graduated with a 2-year degree and got a job. An actual salaried job at a local insurance company as an administrative assistant. It was a real position, a grown-up position, and my parents were thrilled. I called home that weekend, and my mom spent almost 45 minutes talking about Emily's new job, the benefits package, the office location, the outfit she'd bought for her first day, the lunch they were taking her out to, the pride they felt. At the end of the conversation, my mom asked how I was doing, and I said I was good, that I had actually just been accepted into a competitive business analytics seminar that only 10 students per semester were chosen for. And my mom said, "That's wonderful, honey." And then she said, "Have you called Emily yet to congratulate her?" I said not yet. She said to call her, that it would mean so much to her. And I said I would. And I got off the phone and I sat on my couch and I thought about that conversation. I was not angry. I was just noticing. My acceptance into a competitive seminar had lasted approximately 15 seconds before the conversation returned to Emily. I filed that away and kept going, because that was what I did. The car conversation started about 3 months before graduation. It crept in slowly, the way these things do when they are not directly aimed at you. My dad mentioned on a Sunday call that they were looking into options for Emily's commute situation. Her new job was in a part of the city that was difficult to reach on public transit, and having her own car would open things up for her. I thought nothing of it. It was a practical problem with a practical solution. My dad was being practical. The following week, my mom mentioned they had visited a couple of dealerships. I asked what they were thinking. She said something in the sedan range, something reliable, something that showed Emily they believed in her. That word, believed, planted itself in me somewhere quiet and started to grow. Not into anger yet, into awareness. Into a slow reckoning with the fact that believing in someone was something that could apparently be expressed with a vehicle, and I was making a calculation about what had ever been expressed for me. About 6 weeks before graduation, I was on the phone with my dad, and I brought up logistics for the ceremony. The graduation was on a Saturday in May, at the downtown convention center. Parking would be a nightmare. I mentioned that I was coming into town the night before and staying at my parents' house, and I asked if we could figure out a plan together so I wasn't scrambling the morning of. He said of course they were coming. They wouldn't miss it. I said great. So maybe we could all ride together since I was already going to be at the house. And he said, and I want you to hear this exactly as it came out of his mouth, with the tone it had, which was warm and breezy and not unkind. "Megan, you've always figured out transportation on your own. Just take the bus. You're so independent." He paused and added, "I know you'll be fine." He said it like he was giving me something, a compliment, or maybe an acknowledgement of a quality he respected. And I said, "Okay." I said, "Sure, I'll figure it out." And I got off the phone and sat at my kitchen table in Columbus and stayed still for a long time. I was not crying. I was processing. I was trying to understand how I had arrived at 24 years old, 3 weeks from graduating from college, and the sentence, "Just take the bus," was what my father had to offer. Not, "We'll come get you." Not, "We'll leave together." Just, "You've always figured it out. Go figure it out again." The week before graduation, Emily picked up the car. The family thread lit up. My mom sent a video of Emily in the driver's seat, her hands on the wheel, grinning. Then a series of photos. Emily standing next to the car, my parents on either side of her. The dealership sign visible behind them. The white ribbon on the hood. Emily's expression in every photo was that particular kind of joy that comes from being genuinely surprised by something you were also a little expecting. My mom's text in the thread said, "Our girl is going places. So proud of our Emily." My dad sent 3 celebration emojis. I looked at the photos for a while. I liked the message in the thread. I set my phone face down on my desk and went back to packing my bags for the drive home. I didn't say anything in the thread. There wasn't anything I could say in the thread that was actually the thing I needed to say. Graduation day was a Saturday in mid-May. The ceremony was at 2 in the afternoon. I had driven back home the night before, spent the night in my old bedroom, which still had the same furniture and the same faded curtain and the same shelf of books from high school that I had never fully removed. I woke up early, showered, put on the navy wrap dress I had bought on sale 2 weeks prior specifically for this day, and then put my cap and gown on over it. The gown was polyester and already warm in the morning light. My mom came into my room while I was adjusting the cap in the mirror, and she stood in the doorway and her eyes filled up, and she said I looked beautiful. My dad appeared behind her in the hallway, coffee mug in hand, and said he was proud of me. I thanked them. I meant it. I was also watching something in the room at the same time, some invisible barometer, because I had been tracking the weather of my family for 24 years, and I knew how to read it, even when nothing visible was wrong. I asked what time we were all planning to leave. My dad said they needed to stop at Emily's apartment first, because Emily had gotten her hair done for the occasion, and was running a little behind and might need help with something, and also they wanted to see the car in the light. He said the timing was going to be tight, and it would be easier if I just headed over to the convention center on my own. He said I could take the 47 bus. It dropped me 2 blocks from the entrance. He pulled a $20 bill from his wallet and held it out to me. He said, "We'll see you in there." I took the $20 bill. I said, "Okay." I said I'd see them in there. And then I picked up my bag with my heels inside, and I walked downstairs and out the front door and down the sidewalk to the bus stop. And I stood there in my graduation gown in the morning sun and waited for the 47 bus. And when it came, I got on and found a seat and sat down and the doors closed and we pulled away from the curb. And somewhere on that ride across Columbus, the notification came through from my mom's Facebook account, and I opened it, and I read the caption about investing in Emily's future, and I looked at the photo, and I looked at the ribbon on the hood, and I looked at my parents' faces in the photo, the happiness in them, the fullness of that happiness. And then I looked out the bus window at the streets going by and I thought, okay, now I know. Now I know exactly where I am in this picture. The ceremony hall was large and bright and full of the noise that 2,000 graduating students and their families make when they are all pressed into the same space at the same time. I found my section, arranged with the other business administration students alphabetically, and I sat down and I straightened my cap and I breathed. I had spotted my parents when I walked in. They were in the back section, seats on the aisle. My mom had waved, big and warm. My dad had given me a thumbs up. My mom gave me a long hug and said again that she was proud. My dad hugged me and said the same. Emily was there too, standing with them, wearing the dress she had bought for her own graduation 2 years ago. She hugged me. I hugged her back. Everyone was smiling. It was a perfectly normal family moment at a graduation ceremony. I smiled through all of it. I was very good at smiling through all of it. When they called my name, I walked across that stage. I shook the dean's hand. I accepted my diploma. I smiled for the photographer, and the flash went off, and I kept walking, and I did not look out at the audience for my parents' faces because I already knew what I would see. But when I got to the other side of the stage and turned, I found them anyway. My mom was holding her phone up, recording. My dad was turned slightly sideways, saying something to the woman in the seat beside him, his attention divided at the exact moment my name was called. Maybe he looked back a second later. Maybe he caught part of it. I don't know. I just know that when I searched the audience at the moment that represented the end of 4 years of working and planning and carrying myself through a degree that no one had helped me fund, my father was talking to someone else. And the moment landed with a strange, clean clarity. Not catastrophic. Not the way you'd expect a breaking point to feel. More like confirmation. The last data point in a dataset I had been building for years, and now the picture was complete, and I understood what it was showing me. After the ceremony, there was a reception in the outdoor courtyard, tables with punch and cookies, graduates and families milling around in the May afternoon. My parents found me, and we took photos. My mom cried a little and dabbed at her eyes and said she could not believe her baby was a college graduate. My dad had his arm around my shoulder in several of the photos, and he was smiling the big genuine smile he gets when he is actually proud. I smiled in every photo. I was present in every photo. I was also, at the same time, standing slightly outside of it all, watching myself be there, watching myself hug them and thank them and pose and laugh at the right moments. The way you can be fully in a moment and also know, with complete certainty, that it is the last moment of a certain kind. The last time things would go on as they had been. Something had already ended. I just had not announced it yet. Dr. Carol Simmons found me at the reception. She had been one of my business professors for 2 semesters, and earlier in the year she had written one of my recommendations, even though I had ultimately decided not to pursue graduate school immediately. She was carrying a cup of punch, and she came up to me and took my hand and said she was genuinely delighted for me, that I had been one of the most engaged students she'd had in several years, and she asked about what I was doing after graduation. I told her I had accepted a position as a junior analyst at a logistics company in Nashville. She said that was excellent, that it suited what I was good at. And then she said something that I have turned over in my mind almost every day since that afternoon. She said, "You know, Megan, you built all of this yourself. You got here on your own anyway." She said it simply, as an observation. She didn't know about the bus that morning. She didn't know about the car or the Facebook post or the $20 bill my dad had handed me. She just knew my work, and she was saying a true thing about it. But the way it landed, in that particular moment, after that particular morning, was not simple at all. It felt like being recognized so directly and so plainly that it almost hurt. Like being seen by the right person at exactly the right time. I thanked her, and we talked for a few more minutes about Nashville and the job and her current research, and then she moved on to other students. And I stood in the courtyard with my diploma in the folder I had bought from the campus bookstore, and I let what she said go all the way through me. The 47 bus home left from a stop a block and a half from the convention center. My parents had offered me a ride, but there were 4 of them, and Emily's new car and my dad's sedan, and it was a complicated logistics puzzle that somehow ended with me saying I'd take the bus back since it was easier. Which was not true. It was not easier. It was just familiar. It was just the answer I gave before I even thought about it. The automatic answer of someone who has spent her whole life finding ways to ask for less. On the bus home, I had a window seat. The afternoon was warm. The kind of May afternoon that smells like cut grass and car exhaust, and the specific sweetness that rises off warm pavement after a dry spring. I watched Columbus go by through the scratched window, and I thought about Dr. Simmons and her sentence. "You got here on your own anyway." And then I thought about another sentence, the one my dad had said 2 weeks earlier. "You've always figured out transportation on your own." And I held those two sentences next to each other in my mind and looked at the gap between them. One person saw my independence as something I had built, a capability I had earned through effort and discipline and necessity. The other person saw it as an excuse for not showing up. And I thought, I have spent 24 years believing the wrong sentence. Something decided itself quietly on that bus ride home. I did not make a speech to myself. I did not cry or rage or plan a confrontation. I just felt something shift into a different position, the way a bone feels when it finally sets after being slightly wrong for a long time. And what settled into place was this. I was going to stop performing for them. I was going to stop being fine. Not by making a scene, not by picking a fight, not by pointing to the car and the bus and the Facebook post and demanding an accounting. Just by moving. By accepting the job in Nashville. By going somewhere new where no one had a story about me, where no one expected me to be the capable, independent one who didn't need anything, where I could find out what kind of person I was when I wasn't spending most of my energy managing other people's perception of my needs. I thought about what Dr. Simmons had said, and I thought about the 47 bus, and I thought about the white ribbon on the hood of that silver car, and I thought, I have been waiting for them to notice. I have been waiting for 24 years for someone in my own family to say what Dr. Simmons said in 30 seconds at a punch table in a courtyard. And I don't think that notice is coming. And I think that's information. I think that's the most important information I have been given, and it was given to me today, and I am going to use it. Please subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet. It is free, and it takes seconds, and it genuinely matters. If this is reaching you, if you are recognizing something in this story that you've been trying to name about your own life, I want you to know that this channel exists specifically for that. Drop a comment below about what's sitting with you right now. I read them. You are not alone in this, and you are not being dramatic. I moved to Nashville in August. I had packed my 2017 Honda Civic, which I had bought used 3 years before with internship savings, with everything that mattered. My furniture was coming from the apartment I had been renting in Columbus, which I transported in a rented van the same day. My parents drove down to help me move in. My mom brought a box of items from my childhood room. Some books, a few photos, the mug I had used all through high school. My dad helped me assemble furniture and carry boxes, and he commented on the neighborhood and asked if it was safe, the way he does when he doesn't know what else to say. Emily had not come. She had a commitment with a friend. My parents stayed one night at a hotel nearby, and we went out to dinner together at a Mexican restaurant on the east side of Nashville. And it was a warm dinner, a genuinely warm one. My dad ordered a margarita and made a toast to my new chapter. My mom held my hand across the table, and I loved them in that moment, fully and completely, and also held the knowledge of the bus and the car and the ribbon and the $20 bill quietly inside me, in a room I had decided not to open that evening. I did not want to spend my first night in Nashville reopening that room. I wanted the dinner to be what it was. For the first couple of months in Nashville, I kept a normal rhythm with my family. I called home about every 2 weeks. I responded in the group thread when something needed a response. I was building something real in Nashville, and I kept my attention on it. My job was demanding and interesting. My apartment was mine and quiet, and exactly what I needed. And I was slowly meeting people. I joined a running group that met in Shelby Park on Saturday mornings, and through that I met Jordan, who lived 2 floors above me in my building and who became the closest friend I'd had since college. Jordan was someone I didn't have to perform being fine around. I could be whatever I actually was that day. I had not had that in a long time. I hadn't realized how much energy I had been using to perform competence for people who expected it, until I was around someone who didn't expect anything in particular, who just wanted to know how I actually was. It was like unclenching something I had been holding for years without knowing it was clenched. I want to tell you something about the job because it matters to the story. I was a junior analyst at a mid-sized logistics company. My role involved data management, process optimization, some client reporting. It was the kind of job that has a real learning curve in the first 6 months, where you spend a lot of time feeling just slightly behind, and then it clicks, and you start to feel like you belong there. I had a manager named Sandra who gave feedback directly, which I respected, and a team that was collegial in the specific way that office teams are when they are not performing for each other constantly. I was good at the job. I had always been good at jobs. That was the thing my family had called independence, but was actually just discipline born of necessity. Here, that discipline was just competence. It wasn't a character trait that justified not giving me a ride. It was just competence. And being seen as competent without it meaning you were going to be left to manage alone was a revelation I had not anticipated. The first sign that things were going wrong back home came in October, about 2 months after I moved. Emily mentioned in the family thread that she was going to be taking a little break from the insurance job. She didn't explain further. My mom texted me privately to say Emily was going through some things and might need a little time. I said I hoped she was okay and asked if she needed to talk to someone, a therapist or counselor. My mom said Emily was managing. I said, okay. What I was also thinking, privately, was, the BMW payment is $640 a month. I did not say that. It was not the right moment, and also I was not sure yet that I needed to say anything. I was watching. I had learned to watch. By November, I got a direct call from my dad. A direct call from my dad rather than a text or a call that came through my mom meant something significant was happening. He was careful in how he started the conversation, the way people are when they have been rehearsing what they are going to say and are now deploying it in real time. He said they had some unexpected expenses. He said Emily was between jobs right now and that things were a little stretched. He said he was wondering if I was in a position to pitch in a little. He said it exactly like that. Pitch in a little. Like it was neighborly. Like we were organizing a potluck. He said it with the ease of someone who expected the answer to be yes, because the answer had always been yes. In every version of our family history, the answer from me had been yes. And I felt the old reflex engage. You're the capable one. You handle things. Say yes and figure it out. And then I caught it. I caught it like catching a door before it swings shut, held it there for a moment, and looked at it. My dad had handed me a $20 bill for the bus on graduation day. They had spent $43,000 on Emily's car, and now they were calling me to pitch in. I said, Dad, I'm genuinely sorry you're in a tight spot. I'm just getting settled here and I'm not in a position to contribute financially right now. He said, of course, no pressure. He said he understood. He got off the phone quickly after that. I sat in my apartment for a long time after the call. I did not feel guilty, which surprised me. I felt something clearer than that, something that was almost relief. The car situation did not resolve itself. Emily did not find new work quickly. By December, she had missed 2 consecutive payments, and my parents had covered them both, which had put a real dent in the savings they had been relying on. My dad called me again in early December, and this time he was less gentle about it. He said they really needed my help. He said $640 for 1 month, just to get through the quarter. He said he knew I was doing well in Nashville, that he had always known I would do well because of who I was, and that this was what family was for. He said, "You know we'd do the same for you, Megan." And that sentence, those 9 words, did something to my interior architecture that I had not expected. Because I did know. I knew exactly what they would do for me. I had watched them do it for 24 years. I had watched them do the equivalent of $20 bus fare while they spent $43,000 on a car for my sister. I knew exactly what they would do for me. I asked if we could get on a video call, all of us that weekend. My dad said yes. My mom agreed when he relayed the request. Emily joined too, though I hadn't specifically asked her to. which meant she already knew the call was happening and what it was probably about. On a Saturday afternoon in December, I opened my laptop in my apartment in Nashville and joined the call. My parents were in their living room. Emily was in her own apartment, slightly off camera, looking at something to the side. Everyone was careful with their faces. We had all been careful with our faces in this family for a very long time. I let them speak first. My dad summarized the situation. Emily was between jobs, the car payments were adding up, they were stretched and needed support from the family. He used the word family the way people use it when they mean you specifically. He said he knew it was a lot to ask. He said he hoped I could see my way to helping just for a month or two until things stabilized. He looked at me through the screen with the particular expression of a parent who is accustomed to things working out and is mildly surprised they have to explain the situation in detail. I said, "Dad, I want to be honest with you about something, and I need you to hear me before you respond." He said, "Okay." I said, "I have been thinking a lot since graduation about what our family has invested in and who has received that investment." I said, "You and Mom have always called me independent, and I used to think that was a compliment about who I was. I've come to understand it differently. I think independent was the word our family used so that I could be the person who didn't need resources, which meant the resources could go elsewhere." I said, "I am not saying this to hurt you. I am saying it because you are asking me to help pay for a car that cost $43,000 that you bought for Emily the week of my graduation, while I was on the 47 bus in my cap and gown. My total financial support from you over 4 years of college was $2,000 my freshman year. I would like you to understand those two numbers next to each other before you ask me for $640. There was a silence on the call that had real mass to it. My mom had her hand over her mouth. My dad had opened his mouth and then closed it. Emily was looking directly at the camera now, which she had not been doing before, and her expression was something I had not expected to see. It was not defensive. It was stunned in a different way. She said quietly, almost to herself, "I didn't know it was $2,000. I said, "I know." I said, "I am not angry. I don't want to be having a fight, but I am not in a position to absorb financial consequences from decisions that were made without me, about money that was never offered to me." My dad said it felt like an attack. I said, "I understand why it feels that way. It is not an attack. It is a description. I am describing what happened." My mom said she was sorry, that they had never meant for me to feel unsupported, that they had believed I was strong and they had celebrated that strength, and they had not understood what it looked like from the inside. I said, "I know you believed that, and I need you to understand that believing it doesn't change what happened. Being capable is not the same as not needing anything. And being quiet about it is not the same as being fine with it." The call ended without a resolution, which was the right ending for it. Not dramatic. Nobody slammed a laptop. My dad said he needed time to think about what I had said. My mom said she loved me. Emily said nothing in the last 15 minutes of the call, but she kept looking at the screen. I said I loved them too. I ended the call. I sat in my apartment in Nashville and I breathed. I felt something I had not expected to feel. Not better, not triumphant, not vindicated. Just finally honest. Like I had put down something I had been carrying so long I had forgotten it was not part of my body. 4 days after the call, my dad called me back. He was quieter than I had heard him in years. He sounded like a man who had not slept as much as he needed to and had been doing a lot of interior accounting. He said he had been thinking about what I said. He said he and my mom had talked, at length, and that they wanted me to know they had heard me. He said, "We told ourselves a story about you. We told ourselves that the way you handled things was who you were, that your independence was a gift, and I think we used that story to avoid looking at whether we were being fair." He paused. He said, "We were not fair to you." He did not say it easily. He said it haltingly and with the particular difficulty of someone saying a thing they have never said before and are not sure they know how to form correctly. But he said it. And I listened, and I thanked him. Not with relief or warmth, but with honesty. I said, "That means something to me." I said, "I don't want to be estranged from you, but I need us to be in a different kind of relationship than we've been in. One where I don't disappear into the background while everything happens for Emily." He said, "I understand." I think he was beginning to. My mom called me the next afternoon. She was more emotional than my dad, which was not surprising. She cried at the beginning of the call and said she had been awake the night before thinking about the Facebook post, about the morning of my graduation, about what it must have looked like from where I was sitting. She said, "I was so caught up in what we were doing for Emily that I didn't even think about where you were. I didn't think about you on that bus. And I'm ashamed of that." I told her I didn't need her to be ashamed. I needed her to understand. And she said, "I do. I'm trying to." We talked for almost an hour. It was the most honest conversation my mother and I had ever had. At the end, she asked what she could do, how she could help repair things. I said, "Just keep doing what you're doing right now. Just keep being honest about what happened. That's all I need you to do." Emily returned the car in January. It did not happen in one dramatic moment. It happened over several weeks of conversations I was not part of and some I heard about secondhand. The monthly payments had accumulated to a point where nobody involved could absorb them. Emily was still between jobs. My parents had depleted their cushion covering the back payments, and the math of the situation had become undeniable, even from inside it. They sold the car back through the dealership as a trade-in. Cars lose value the moment they leave the lot, and a BMW 3 Series that had been owned for 8 months came back for less than the balance on the loan. My parents had to cover the gap between the resale value and what was still owed. When you added up the down payment, the months of payments they had covered, and the negative equity at resale, the total financial damage to my parents from that car was somewhere in the range of $27,000 to $28,000. I did not do this math out loud in any conversation. I didn't need to. The number existed in the air around all of us, unspoken, plain. The thing that the car had been meant to represent, the investment in Emily's future, the believing in her, the visible act of choosing her, had not held. It had not held because the car was not the investment. The car was a symbol of an investment, and you cannot build a future on a symbol. I had built something actual, something that could not be repossessed or traded in at a loss, and I had built it by myself with $20 for the bus and a compliment about my independence. And now I was sitting in Nashville with a job and an apartment and a savings account and friendships that were real, while the thing my parents had bought to demonstrate their belief in my sister was sitting on a dealer's lot waiting to be sold to someone else. I did not feel satisfaction about this. I want to be careful about that. I felt something more complicated, something that had grief in it alongside the clarity, something that understood that my parents had meant well and had still done damage, and that both of those things were true at the same time. The grief was real. The grief was for the version of the story where none of this had happened, where I had a family that had seen me clearly all along, where I had not spent 2 decades learning to make myself small enough to be manageable. That version of the story was never real, but I had believed in it for a long time, and losing it, even in the process of finally seeing clearly, was a loss. I allowed myself to feel that without trying to fix it or explain it away. That, too, was something new. By the following spring, things between me and my family had settled into something new. Something that I did not have a good word for yet, because the words we use for family dynamics tend to be too simple for what actually happens in families. It was not warmth exactly, not the unconditional warmth that I had sometimes watched other people have with their parents and quietly envied. But it was honest. My dad called me to check in on my work, and actually listened when I talked about what I was doing, asked follow-up questions, was present in the conversation in a way he had not previously managed. My mom had stopped performing family togetherness and started asking real questions. Emily and I texted occasionally, short and genuine exchanges. She had found a new position in retail management by spring and seemed more settled in it, more suited to it. I was glad for her. I was genuinely glad for her. I had never wanted Emily to fail. I had wanted not to be invisible. Those are two different things, and I had to learn to hold them separately. I got a raise in April, a real one, moved from junior to mid-level analyst, and it was meaningful for more reasons than the money. It meant that in a place where nobody knew my story, nobody had a pre-existing narrative about who I was and what I was capable of, I had shown up and done something that warranted recognition. That felt different from the recognition I had gotten at home, which had always been for the wrong thing, for not needing things, for managing, for being the easy one. This recognition was for what I had actually done, for the quality of the work, for what I had brought to the table every day. Sandra, my manager, pulled me into a conference room and told me directly what had earned the promotion: my consistency, my ability to see the larger picture in the data, the way I communicated findings to clients without making things feel more complicated than they were. She said, "You have good instincts, and you trust them." I thought about that on the drive home. I had always had good instincts. I had just spent most of my life being told that those instincts made me easy to leave on the bus. That distinction mattered to me more than I expected it to. I went home for Thanksgiving, the first one since the video call, since my dad's second phone call, since everything had been named. It was strange in the specific way that things are strange when everyone is trying very hard and knows that they are trying, and there is still love in the room despite the strangeness. My dad made a big deal of the turkey. My mom had made the sweet potato dish I have liked since childhood. Emily came with her boyfriend, a quiet guy named James, who asked good questions and didn't try too hard. We sat around the table, and the conversation moved carefully. But it moved, and there were moments when it was just dinner, just a family at Thanksgiving, just people who knew each other eating food and talking about things that didn't require anyone to be brave. At some point during the meal, my dad raised his glass and said, "To Megan, who built something real." He said it simply, and he meant it. And everyone drank. And it landed differently than his compliments used to land. Not hollow, not a substitution for something else, not the pride that costs nothing of calling me independent. Just a true thing said by a person trying to say it right. I still have the image of the Facebook post in my memory. I haven't had the app on my phone in several months. I unfollowed my mom's account quietly because I needed the separation between what I was building and what I'd come from. But the image is there when I call it up. My parents and Emily in front of the dealership, the big silver car, the white ribbon, the caption about investing in Emily's future. And I think about the word investment and what it actually means when you test it against reality. An investment is a commitment of resources toward an expected return. My parents invested in Emily's future and received a car returned to a dealer at a loss after 8 months, a daughter who was starting over in a more modest position, and a fracture in their family that took months and 2 very honest phone calls to begin repairing. I invested in my own future, with 4 years of work and sacrifice and showing up and never asking for more than I could carry, and I received a job in a city I chose, an apartment that is mine, friendships that are real, a raise that was earned, and the very specific freedom that comes from knowing you built something and it cannot be taken from you because you built it out of the right material. I am not saying this to win. There is no winning this. I am saying it because it is the honest version of the accounting my dad thought he was doing when he told me to just take the bus. I want to speak directly to you for a moment, to whoever is listening. If you are the one in your family who handles things, the one who doesn't make noise, the one everyone assumes is fine because you have been so good for so long at performing fine, I want to say something clearly. Being capable is not the same as not deserving help. Being quiet about pain is not the same as being pain-free. Figuring things out on your own is something you did because you had to, not because you needed less than the people around you. And the story your family told about you, the one where you are strong and self-sufficient, and the one who doesn't need anything, that story was convenient for them. It may have even been told with love. But convenience and love are not the same thing, and I need you to know that, because I spent 24 years not knowing it, and the cost of not knowing it was very high. And I also want to say this. You do not have to blow anything up to start living differently. You do not have to give a speech or send an email or have the big confrontation. You can simply stop absorbing things that are not yours to carry. You can simply start noticing what you actually need and letting yourself need it. That is enough. That is a beginning. The hardest thing about all of it, harder than the bus, and harder than the ceremony, and harder than the December phone call, was letting go of the version of myself that had decided not to need things. That version of me had been built carefully and over a long time, and it was in many ways functional and strong, and I do not want to dismiss it completely, because it got me through 4 years of college and a move to a new city and a career and a life. But it was also costing me something I could not see clearly until I started putting it down. It was costing me the ability to ask for things, the ability to expect things, the ability to understand, in my body rather than just my head, that the fact that I could manage on my own did not mean I should have had to. And the day I most clearly felt that shift, the day the thing that had been bent for years finally straightened completely, was not the day my dad apologized. It was a day several weeks after that, a regular weekday afternoon in my Nashville apartment, when I was making coffee and I realized I had not, in the course of that entire day, congratulated myself for not needing anything. I had just been living. I had just been a person in her apartment making coffee. And that, of all things, felt like the first truly free moment I could remember having in a very long time. The investment my parents made in Emily's future cost them far more than the price of the car. It cost them $27,000 in financial damage when the car came back. It cost them months of strain. It cost them the version of their family where I absorbed things quietly and no one had to reckon with the math. That version is gone. Not because I burned it down, but because the bus ride revealed it for what it was. And once something is revealed, you cannot unreveal it. I do not carry the bus ride as a wound anymore. I carry it as the thing that finally made me see clearly. I carry it as the morning I stopped pretending. And pretending had been so exhausting for so many years that not doing it anymore feels like something I cannot fully describe. It feels like air in a room where the windows have finally been opened. If you have stayed with me all the way through this story, I want to say thank you. I mean that without any performance or politeness. Thank you for listening. Thank you for giving your time to this, because time is real and I know you chose to spend some of it here. If any part of this touched something you have been carrying, some version of this story that belongs to your own family, please share this with someone who needs to hear it. You probably know exactly who that person is. And if you are not yet subscribed to this channel, please do that now. It is completely free. The button is right below this video, and it is the thing that tells me these stories are worth telling and this space is worth keeping alive. Drop a comment and tell me what hit you today, or just tell me where you are in the world. I am Megan, and I got here on my own anyway, but I am not staying quiet about it anymore.